Hello everyone and welcome back to Life Single Review. I hope this video finds you in good health and high spirits. Today I'm bringing you a story that will truly touch your heart and maybe, just maybe, restore your faith in humanity. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into this incredible journey together. Let me ask you something real quick. If you saw a stranger bleeding on the side of the road, would you stop to help? Now, what if stopping meant using every last dollar you had worked so hard to earn? What if that money was meant for your own dreams, your own future? Could you still do it? Today's story is about a poor man named D, who faced exactly this choice. And what he did next? Well, it's something that many wealthy people wouldn't even dare to do. His decision will leave you speechless. I promise you that. But before we get into this amazing story, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our heartwarming stories. And if this video touches your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family. Drop a comment below telling us what you would do in D's situation. All right, let's get started. So let me introduce you to D, a hard-working man who makes his living as a laborer at the boat dock. His life isn't easy, folks. Every single day, he wakes up before sunrise and heads to work, doing back-breaking labor just to put food on the table. The morning our story takes place, D woke up feeling absolutely terrible. His head had been pounding since the moment he opened his eyes, and honestly, all he wanted to do was stay in bed and rest. But you know what? He couldn't afford to do that. He had just one more day of work left to finish repairing a boat, and once he completed it, the owner would finally pay him his wages. D stood there that morning, holding his aching head, battling with himself. Should he take the day off? His body was screaming yes, but his mind knew better. If he skipped work that day, he wouldn't get paid until the end of the month, and he desperately needed that money now. So despite feeling unwell, despite the headache that wouldn't go away, D made the difficult decision to push through and go to work anyway. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? This is the reality for so many hard-working people out there who can't afford to get sick. Now, let's talk about why D needed that money so badly. You see, times were incredibly tough for him. Money was getting tighter by the day, and finding stable work was becoming harder and harder. Just recently, he had taken a trip down south to retrieve a truck, and that journey alone had cost him quite a bit of money. Can you imagine? Not only could he not work during that time, but he also had to spend money he didn't really have. It was a double blow to his already struggling finances. Every penny counted for D. He wasn't living paycheck to paycheck by choice. He was living that way because he had no other option. The weight of financial pressure was constantly on his shoulders, and yet he kept pushing forward with determination and hope for a better tomorrow. But here's the thing that kept D going through all these hardships: love. D had someone special in his life, a woman named Huyen, and he was saving every dollar he could to give her a proper wedding. Now, Huyen had been married once before, but she had never actually had a real wedding ceremony. Can you believe that? And D, despite being poor, despite barely having enough for himself, wanted to make sure Huyen didn't feel shortchanged this time around. He didn't need a fancy, extravagant wedding like the rich folks have. But he wanted something meaningful, something that would ease her sadness and show her how much she meant to him. After a long, exhausting day at work, D was finally heading home. His head was still throbbing, his body was tired, and all he could think about was getting home to Huyen and having a warm meal. But then, something caught his attention. As he was riding along the road, he noticed a motorcycle parked on the side, with its engine still running. That's strange, he thought. Where's the driver? Dee slowed down and looked around. The road was completely empty, eerily quiet. And then, his heart dropped. There, lying on the ground not far from the motorcycle, was a young man, motionless. "Oh my God," Dee thought. "Someone's been in an accident." Without a second thought, Dee stopped his bike and rushed over. The young man was bleeding from his head and his arm, and he wasn't responding. Dee's mind was racing. "What should I do? There's nobody else here." The road was deserted, and this poor guy was lying there all alone, possibly dying. Dee immediately bent down and checked if the man was still breathing. Thank God he was, but he was in really bad shape. "Hey, wake up! Can you hear me?" Dee called out, gently shaking the young man's shoulder. The guy's eyes flickered open for just a moment. "Where does it hurt?" Dee asked urgently. "My chest," the young man gasped weakly. "Please, help me get to the hospital." That was all Dee needed to hear. He knew he had to act fast. Okay, hang in there. I'm going to get you to the hospital right now," Dee promised. But getting the injured man to his feet was no easy task. The poor guy could barely stand, and Dee had to support almost all of his weight. "Come on, lean on my shoulder, slowly now. You can do it." Dee encouraged him, struggling to keep them both upright. Finally, after what felt like forever, Dee managed to get the young man onto his motorcycle. "Hold on to me tightly, okay?" Dee instructed. He looked back at the victim's motorcycle, still running by the roadside. There was no time to deal with it now. "Don't worry about your bike. I'll have someone bring it back later. Right now, we need to get you help." And with that, Dee sped off toward the hospital as fast as he safely could, with a complete stranger clinging to his back. When they arrived at the hospital, Dee was shouting for help before he even got the young man off the bike. Doctor, please help me!" A doctor rushed out and immediately began assessing the situation. "What happened to him? Why are there so many scratches?" the doctor asked while examining the wounds. "He fell off his motorbike, doctor," Dee explained quickly. "Are you a relative of the patient?" the doctor inquired. No, I'm not," Dee admitted. "I just found him lying near a field. He was bleeding a lot from his head and his arm, so I brought him here as fast as I could." The doctor nodded and got to work immediately, cleaning and disinfecting the wounds. Then he turned to Dee with a serious expression. "We need to do CT scans and blood tests to check for internal injuries. Can you check if he has a phone? We need to contact his family right away." Dee carefully searched the young man's pockets and found his phone. "How do I unlock this? Can you tell me?" he asked the injured man. "Call my mom, please," the young man whispered, managing to unlock the screen. Dee quickly found the contact saved as Mom and made the call, explaining the entire situation to the worried mother on the other end. Now, here's where the story gets really intense, folks. After Dee had contacted the victim's family, he thought his job was done. He had saved a life, gotten the guy to the hospital, and called his family. That should be enough, right? But then the doctor called him aside. "Sir, we need to run blood tests and a CT scan immediately to check for internal injuries, possibly fractured ribs and head trauma," the doctor explained with urgency in his voice. "We need an advance payment of about $40 for these tests." $40. Let that sink in for a moment. The doctor was asking Dee, a complete stranger to this patient, to pay $40. And remember, Dee's family was still on their way. They hadn't arrived yet. Dee stood there, frozen. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the money he had just earned after several grueling days working at the dock. This was it. This was all the money he had. His wages for days of back-breaking labor, Money he desperately needed. Can you imagine what was going through Dee's mind at that moment? He stood there, holding that money in his hands, and his thoughts were racing. This money is from several days of hard work at the dock, he thought to himself. It's just enough to pay the hospital fee in advance. But I don't even know this person. I don't know what kind of family he has. Will they even pay me back? These were all reasonable questions, weren't they? I mean, let's be honest here. How many of us would hesitate in this situation? Dee needed this money. He needed it for his wedding with Huyen, for their future together. But then something beautiful happened. Dee made a choice that defines true humanity. Forget it, he decided. Saving a life is the most important thing. Whether they pay me back or not, that doesn't matter right now. A human life is at stake. And just like that, he handed over the money. Every single dollar. It was already late when Day finally made it home that evening. Huyen had been waiting for him, worried sick. "Oh, why are you home so late today?" she asked as soon as she saw him. Day sat down, exhausted, and told her everything that had happened. "On the way back, I met someone who had an accident, so I took him to the hospital. That's why I'm late," he explained. Huyen's eyes widened as she listened to the whole story. Instead of being upset about the money or the late hour, you know what she said? "He was lucky to have met you. Nowadays, so many people on the street are just indifferent. They're afraid of getting involved, so they don't dare to help." She immediately set about warming up his dinner and preparing his headache medicine. As they sat together eating that simple meal, there was a warmth in that humble home that money could never buy. Here was a couple with almost nothing, yet they had everything that truly mattered: love, compassion, and humanity. And that, my friends, is the story of Dee, a poor man with the richest heart you could ever imagine. Think about it for a moment. Here was a man who could barely afford his next meal, who was working himself sick to save up for a simple wedding. And yet, when faced with a dying stranger, he didn't hesitate for even a second. He gave away everything he had earned, knowing full well he might never see that money again. You know what really gets me about this story? It's that Dee represents something we've almost lost in today's world. We live in a society where people walk past someone in need because they don't want to get involved, where they're afraid of being scammed or taken advantage of. But Dee? He chose compassion over caution. He chose humanity over money. Money can be earned again, but a human life? That's irreplaceable. So I want to ask you honestly, if you were in Dee's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have stopped? Would you have given away your last dollar to save a stranger's life? This story reminds us that true wealth isn't measured by what's in our bank accounts, but by what's in our hearts. Day may have been poor in money, but he was incredibly rich in compassion and humanity. Thank you so much for watching this emotional journey with me today. I hope Dee's story has touched your heart the way it touched mine, and maybe inspired you to be a little kinder, a little braver. If this story moved you, please show it some love with a like, and share it with your friends and family, so more people can be inspired by Dee's incredible kindness. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Single Review, and hit that notification bell for more heartwarming stories. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Until next time, take care, and be kind to one another.